Do you like apple pie as much as I do? My favorite pie is apple pie. Not just any apple pie though. This gluten-free, best ever apple pie. That's right, this is gluten-free. You would never know it. The crust is so flaky, you will never be able to tell it's gluten-free. The apples are nice and soft, they're not crunchy at all. This is the perfect pie for Thanksgiving or any time. So let's get started. Okay, start by putting half a stick of butter, a whole cup of brown sugar, and 2 teaspoons of cinnamon in a large saucepan or Dutch oven. And put this over a medium heat, stirring it occasionally until it starts to break down and become more of a liquid. Now, you don't have to pre-cook your filling. I never did for many, many years, but I recently discovered that if you pre-cook the filling just a little bit, you avoid having that gap between the apples and the crust, you know, that sometimes occurs. Like you'll have what looks like a beautiful tall pie, and then all of a sudden you cut into it and there's this huge empty space where the apples once were and they have broken down. So pre-cooking is a way to keep that from happening, and it really truly does work. I tried it with my apple pie and I'm convinced, and I'll never make it again without pre-cooking. As you can see, this has created somewhat of a caramel-like situation here, so we can go ahead and add our apples in. By the way, I'm using Rome apples. My grandmother swore by Rome apples, my mom swears by Rome apples, and I love Rome apples as well, especially in a pie or anything baked, because they really soften up. They don't necessarily turn into mush or applesauce. They just really soften nicely to where there's no longer a residual crunch. That's one thing I can't stand about using Granny Smith apples in pies or anything baked, because there's always a residual crunch, and I personally don't like to bite into a piece of apple pie or an apple turnover or what have you and still have that crunch to it. To me, it's really off-putting. Now, if you can't find Rome in your area, you can substitute. A good substitute is Ginger Gold, Jonna Gold, Jonathan, or even Golden Delicious. All of those apples have that characteristic, like softer texture to them, and they'll break down a little more than a Granny Smith apple would. So here I'm just cooking these apples gently over medium heat, but I'm constantly moving them around. And basically this will take about 5 minutes to do, and you'll know when you're done when the apples start letting off their own juices and the caramely bits melt back into the apples. So take it off the heat at this point. What I like to do is put it on a baking sheet. That just allows it to cool quicker in one layer. When I was making the video, I totally forgot to put in my tapioca starch at this point. That's when I would put it in, but it can always be added later. I went ahead and already lined my pie plate with the bottom pie crust. So now we can load it up with all of these apples. And these have cooled down significantly just on the counter. You can also put them in the fridge if you want to. If you want to like make this the next day, you can make this filling ahead of time. I tend to overstuff my apple pies because I just like a lot of filling in my apples. I like apple pies. I like a nice thick apple pie. I like to dot the top with a little more softened butter, just because why not? More butter is always better. Just a little bit. And then we'll get to rolling out our the top crust, and get it on the pie. And you'll see how so super simple it is to roll out this crust. It is like no other crust you've ever had. I'm telling you, everybody that makes this crust or eats this crust just raves about it. It is so good, y'all. It is so flaky, and it's so simple to roll out just like a regular gluten-filled, wheat-filled pie crust would be. You just have to do the usual, roll it a little bit and turn it, roll it and turn it. Keep turning it because otherwise it's going to stick. This pie crust is just beautiful. Can you tell I love it? It's one of my favorite things, and I will always talk it up. So go ahead and roll it up onto your rolling pin just to make it easier to put on the top, and unroll it. Now what I like to do with the overhang, I like to take kitchen shears and go around, leave just a little bit of a lip because we're going to tuck that under the bottom crust, or the bottom, tuck it over the bottom crust, excuse me. And I keep these scraps for making little decorative pieces if you want to, or I do what my mom used to do every time she made a pie when we were little, and she'd sprinkle those scraps with cinnamon and sugar and put them in the oven with the pie, and they'd be like little, I don't know, pie crust snacks. They were so good. It was like a tease before we actually got to eat the pie. All right, I've gone around the whole pie and tucked the top crust in, and now I'm just crimping the sides or the edges. You can do whatever design you want. I'm pretty simple when it comes to pies. I like to just do the crimped, you know, with my fingers. And then what I like to use is actually a little bit of heavy cream. If I don't have heavy cream, I'll use half and half or whole milk. I just feel like it gives a better sheen to the crust than using an egg wash or something like that. And then what I like to do after I'm done brushing the whole pie, I like to sometimes make little decorations. I have these cute little fall plunger cutters. They're like plunger cookie cutters. And I'll take some of the scraps and just make a few of the leaves with the plunger cutter and stick them right on. Don't need to have any extra thing to stick them on. You'll just stick them right on the pie where it's been brushed with the heavy cream. Make sure to cut slits in the top of the pie to vent it for the steam, and then just place your leaves anywhere you want to. It's that simple. And they'll stick right to the heavy cream, so you don't need to add an egg wash or anything else. Brush them with the extra heavy cream. And then I always like to sprinkle my apple pies, especially, with sanding sugar. I ran out of sanding sugar, so this is just regular granulated sugar. You can also use Demerara or turbinado sugar. I'd prefer to use a larger granule of sugar, but that's what I had, so that's what I used. And now all that's left is to put it in the oven. And all the instructions are in my recipe for that. That's it. And there it is, you guys. This is the best apple pie, I kid you not, you will ever eat, gluten-free or not. And if you serve it to somebody who is not gluten-free, they will not know it's gluten-free. I guarantee it. It is so good. The crust is the most light and flaky crust you may have ever had in your life. And the filling is not too soggy. It's perfectly soft. The apples are perfectly soft without having that crunch that I talked about. They are just so good, you guys. I hope you make this for Thanksgiving.